The humid air of Lagos clung to the skin like an unwelcome blanket, and the incessant honking of cars and their blaring horns served as a chaotic lullaby. It was in this cacophony that Bode Bakare's phone buzzed, the persistent vibration tearing through the thin veil of sleep. He grudgingly reached for it, squinting at the screen that displayed an unknown number. Bode, a voice crackled through the speaker, edged with desperation. "It's Tade. I need your help." Tade Ajayi had been Bode's best friend since university days, a bond forged in shared hardships and late-night study sections. But they hadn't spoken in years, their paths diverging after graduation. Bode, a burgeoning journalist, had immersed himself in the bustling life of Lagos, while Tade had disappeared into the anonymity of rural hinterlands. "What's wrong?" Bode asked, now fully awake. "It's about something I discovered, something dangerous. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'll explain everything then." Before Bode could ask more, the line went dead. He stared at his phone, unease creeping into his bones. What could have driven Tade to reach out after all these years? The next morning, Bode found himself driving out of Lagos, heading towards Ibadan. The sprawling cityscape gradually gave way to a lush greenery and the rhythmic hum of rural life. His mind was a whirlwind of questions, each more perplexing than the last. He arrived at the designated meeting spot, a quaint cafe tucked away on a quiet street in Ibadan. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the earthly scent of outdoors as he walked in. He spotted Tade immediately, sitting at a corner table, his face etched with worry. "Bode, over here," Tade called out, his voice strained. They embraced awkwardly, years of silence creating an invisible barrier between them. Tade wasted no time. "I've stumbled onto something big, bigger than anything we've ever encountered." Bode leaned in, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" "It's a conspiracy, Bode. It involves powerful people, politicians, businessmen, even traditional rulers. They are hiding something in the villages around Ibadan. Something sinister." Bode's journalistic instincts fled to life. "Tell me everything." Tade pulled out a worn-out notebook, its pages filled with scribbles and diagrams. "I've been investigating a series of mysterious deaths. They all happened in remote villages, and there is always a pattern. The victims all had contact with a particular company, Otumba's Holding." Bode frowned. "Otumba's Holding? They are one of the biggest agricultural firms in Nigeria." "Exactly," Tade said. "But they are not just into agriculture. I believe they are conducting illegal experiments, dangerous ones, and the people dying are just collateral damage." Bode felt a chill run down his spine. This was bigger than he had anticipated. "Why come to me, Tade? You have all the skills and the contacts to uncover the truth." "And because I can't do this alone," he replied. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Bode decided to stay back in Ibadan. He set up a camp at a modest hotel and began his investigation, starting with the basics: public records, new archives, and corporate filings. The more he dug, the murkier the waters became. Otumba Holdings had a pristine public image, known for their philanthropic efforts and advancements in agricultural technology. They have farms with farm workers and people employed in the supply chain. They have food banks across the city, which enable fresh food and fruit get directly to the people who depend on its quality. Otumba, the CEO, is well respected and seen by the people as the masses' savior. But amidst all this, there were whispers buried deep in online forums and off-the-record conversations of something far more nefarious. Bode's first breakthrough came when he managed to track down a former employee of Otumba's Holding, willing to talk, anonymously of course. They met at a dimly lit bar, the kind of place where secrets felt safe amidst the haze of smoke and the clinking of glasses. "They are into some dark stuff," the whistleblower began the whispers. their eyes darting around nervously. Genetic experiments, bioweapons, things that shouldn't even exist. Bode's heart raced, and the people in the village, test subjects eagerly whispered bluntly. They use them to see how their creations work in real-world conditions. If they die, it's just another data point to them. But they felt a surge of anger. How do they get away with it? Money, power, influence, the whistleblower eagerly replied. They have their fingers in every pie. Politicians, police, even some journalists. They can make anything disappear. Armed with this new information, Bode knew he had to dig deeper. He needed evidence, concrete proof that could bring Otumba's holding down. Tade and Bode spent the next few days traveling to the affected villages, talking to locals and gathering testimonies. The stories were chillingly similar. Healthy individuals falling suddenly ill, strange symptoms, and then death. Then a cold visit by the philanthropy to support for burial expenses, school fees for bereaved children, and gifts. Fear permeated the air, a tangible entity that silenced the tongues of many. In one such village, an elderly man named Baba Akin shared a story that sent shivers down Bode's spine. There were men, Baba Akin said, his voice trembling, men in white coats. They came in the night, taking people away. Some never returned. Bode's recorder captured every word, but he knew it wasn't enough. He needed hard evidence, documents, photos, anything that could corroborate their claims. His opportunity came when Tade received a tip from an inside source. A shipment was coming into Ibadan, one that might hold the key to their investigation. The warehouse on the outskirts of Ibadan was an imposing structure, its high walls and guarded gates a testament to the secrets it held. Bode and Tade watched from a distance, hidden in the shadows of a nearby alley. "They are unloading now," Tade whispered, pointing to the activity around the warehouse entrance. Trucks were being unloaded, crates carried inside by burly men with stern faces. Bode nodded, his mind racing. "We need to get in there." They waited until the dead of night, when the activity had died down and only a few guards remained. With bated breath, they approached the perimeter, scaling the fence with practiced ease. The darkness was their ally, shrouding their movements as they slipped into the warehouse through a side door. Inside the warehouse was a maze of crates and machinery. The hum of refrigeration units filled the air, and the temperature was unearthly cold. Bode's breath came out in frosty puffs as he crept forward, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Over here," Tade called softly. He had found a crate, its lid slightly open. As Bode and Tade meticulously pored over the documents they had retrieved from the warehouse, the horror of their discovery became even more apparent. The papers detailed gruesome experiments that involved human test subjects and unethical medical trials conducted without consent. The reports were signed off by high-ranking officials within Otumba's holding, implicating some of Nigeria's most influential figures. "We have to be extremely careful," Bode said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just about Otumba Holdings. This implicates powerful people who will do anything to protect their interests." Tade nodded, his expression grim. "We need to secure these documents and make sure multiple copies are kept in safe places." "We need to secure these documents and make sure multiple copies are kept in safe places. We can't afford to lose this evidence." They spent the next few hours creating duplicates of the documents, storing them in encrypted digital formats, and sending copies to trusted contacts. Once they were satisfied with their precautions, they turned their attention to planning their next move. With their evidence secured, Bode and Tade strategized on how to go public. They contacted a few trusted journalists and editors, briefing them of the situation and ensuring they understood the gravity of the evidence they had. Bode reached out to his old university professor, a renowned human rights advocate, to gain further support and leverage. The story broke like a thunderclap across Nigeria. Major newspapers, TV channels, and online platforms simultaneously releasing the damning reports about Otumba's holding. The public reaction was instantaneous and intense. Protests erupted in cities and towns, demanding justice for the victims and accountability for those involved. Government officials could no longer ignore the uproar. A special investigative committee was formed, and several key figures within Otumba's holding were arrested. The Nigerian president made a public statement vowing to bring all perpetrators to justice and overhaul the regulations surrounding medical agricultural practices in the country. The pressure mounted, and as more victims came forward, the scope of Otumba's holdings operation became clear. They had been operating with impunity for years, their tentacles reaching into every corner of Nigerian society. The revelations sparked a broader debate about corporate ethics and the protection of vulnerable communities. The weeks that rolled by were a whirlwind for Bode and Tade. They were hailed as heroes, their faces plastered across media outlets. Invitations for interviews and speaking engagements poured in, and they found themselves at the center of a nationwide conversation about corruption and human rights. But not everyone was pleased with their success. Threatening messages began to appear, and a shadowy figure loitered near their homes. Bode's car was tampered with, and Tade narrowly avoided an accident one night on a deserted road. They knew they had rattled powerful cages, and the danger was far from over. Despite all the risks, Bode and Tade were determined to continue their work. They set up a foundation to support the families of the victims and to fund further investigations into corporate and governmental ills. Their resolve inspired a new wave of young journalists and activists, all eager to join the fight against corruption. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet cafe in Lagos, Bode reflected on their journey. "We did it, Tade. We made a difference. But this is just the beginning. There is so much more work to be done." Tade smiled, raising his glass in toast. "To the truth, my friend, and to courage to keep seeking it, no matter the cost." As they clinked glasses, Bode's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it, his brow furrowing. It was from an anonymous informant, providing information about another company involved in similar unethical practices. The message was clear. Their fight was far from over. Bode showed the message to Tade, who read it and sighed. "Looks like we have our next target." Bode nodded, a determined look in his eyes. "We won't stop until every last one of them is exposed." As the sun set over Lagos, casting long shadows over the city, Bode and Tade prepared for the next chapter in their battle for justice. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they were ready to face it head-on, united in their resolve to shine a light in the darkest corner of the society. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a golden hue over Bode's modest apartment. He had barely slept, the adrenaline of the past week still coursing through his veins. His phone buzzed again, this time with a familiar name flashing on the screen. It was Femi, his editor at the Lagos Parrot. "Bode, we need to talk," Femi said, his tone serious. Bode felt a pang of concern. "What's up?" "Meet me at the office. There is something we need to discuss on." Bode arrived at the office an hour later, his curiosity piqued. Femi was waiting for him, a stack of papers on his desk. He gestured for Bode to sit down, his expression grave. "We have received an anonymous tip," Femi began, pushing the papers towards Bode. "It's about another company similar to Otumba Holdings. They are called Babanla Pharmaceuticals." Bode skimmed through the documents, his heart sinking as he recognized the pattern. unethical experiments, mysterious deaths, and a web of corruption that extended into the highest echelons of power. Why, I'm not surprised, Bode muttered. He looked up at Femi, a steely resolve in his eyes. We have to go after them. Femi nodded. I knew you'd say that. But be careful, Bode. They will be expecting you. Bode and Tade reunited, their bond stronger than ever. They drove into the investigation with renewed vigor, determined to expose Babanla Pharmaceuticals. This time, they were better prepared, having learned from their previous encounter with Otumba Holdings. They started by tracing the origins of the company, uncovering its connections to influential figures in both politics and business. The deeper they delved, the more dangerous it became. Threatening messages began to appear, and Bode's apartment was broken into. And assailants missed him by a whisker, yet their resolve never wavered. One night, as they were poring over financial records, a breakthrough came in the form of a former scientist who had worked for Bolanle Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Adeyemi had fled the country years ago, but she reached out to Bode with a promise of invaluable information. They arranged a meeting in a secluded location, aware that they were being watched. Dr. Adeyemi revealed the extent of the company's operations, detailing experiments that made their previous findings pale in comparison. They are working on a new drug, she explained, her voice shaking. It's supposed to enhance human capabilities, but it's killing people. They are testing it on prisoners and the homeless, people who won't be missed. Bode and Tade exchanged horrified glances. This was beyond anything they had imagined. Armed with Dr. Adeyemi's testimony and the evidence they had gathered, Bode and Tade planned their next move. They knew that exposing Bolanle Pharmaceuticals will require a coordinated effort, one that involved trusted allies in the media and law enforcement. They reached out to Bode's contacts, setting up a secure network to share information and plan their approach. The risk was immense, but so was the potential for change. The day of the expose arrived, and Bode felt a mix of anticipation and dread. They had arranged for simultaneous publications across major news outlets, ensuring that the story would be too big to suppress. As the articles went live, the response was immediate. Public outrage erupted, protests engulfed the streets, and the government was forced to take action. Arrests were made, and the investigations were launched, peeling back the layers of corruption that had allowed such atrocities to occur. Bode and Tade watched it all unfold from a safe house, their hearts heavy with the weight of their actions. They had struck a blow against injustice, but they knew the fight was far from over. In the aftermath, Bode received an invitation to speak at a global conference on journalism and human rights. He hesitated, still reeling from the recent events, but Tade encouraged him to go. You need to tell your story, Bode, Tade said. People need to hear what we've been through and what we've accomplished. Standing before an audience of peers and admirers, Bode recounted their journey. He spoke of the power of truth, the importance of integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was the quiet conversations afterwards that meant the most. Journalists from around the world approached him, sharing their own stories and expressing their solidarity. But they realized that they were not alone in this fight. There were others, many others, who were willing to stand up against corruption and abuse of power. Back in Lagos, Bode and Tade founded an independent investigative journalism organization dedicated to uncovering the truth and holding the powerful accountable. They named it the Vanguard, a tribute to their mission of leading the charge for justice. The work was arduous and fraught with danger, but it was also incredibly rewarding. They trained a new generation of journalists, instilling in them the values of courage, integrity, and perseverance. Years passed, and their efforts began to bear fruit. Corrupt officials were ousted, unethical companies were dismantled, and the voices of the oppressed were amplified. Bode and Tade became symbols of resistance and hope, their names etched into the annals of Nigerian history. One evening, as they sat on Bode's balcony, watching the sun set over Lagos, they reflected on their journey. The shadows had not vanished completely, but there was a new light in the horizon. "We've come a long way," Tade said, a smile playing on his lips. Bode nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "And we have a long way to go, but we are making a difference. That's what matters." As the city lights flickered to life, they raised their glasses in a silent toast to the future. The fight for truth and justice would continue, and they would be at the forefront, unwavering in their commitment to making the world a better place. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please like and share, comment and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.